You should have heard the little prompt that said recording in progress.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to get started. I am here today with Zlata Titova, and the reason we're here is this is a Brighton Business Builders series where we interview members, and Brighton Business Builders is part of the Brighton Chamber of Commerce, so it's an opportunity to get to know the Brighton Business Builders a little bit better. This will be published on YouTube, and so we don't have to listen to me talk so much. Let's get right into Zlata. And first, Zlata, I would love for you to tell me the journey that got you where you are today.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, 27 years in the making. I am a Russian refugee. So I was born in Russia. And so shortly after the union broke up, my family and I moved to Denver, Colorado. And so that's kind of where my journey began. And I mean, graduated in 2014, did a little bit of college. I grew up as a Slavic Baptist, and so growing up, that was just like a lot of rules and a lot of tradition, which was really good for a growing child, I think, but develops a lot of good character. But yeah, and then I found myself needing to find work, so I decided to go out and try and see what I can find. And I mean, no place was hiring at the moment, which is, I mean, because people will and companies will ask you that you need 6 or 7 years of experience, and then they won't hire you for an entry-level position. So that's where I was stuck for a long part of my career finding journey. And then when I was 19, I actually ended up interviewing for a closed benefits provider. It's an insurance company that provides life insurance for unions and high-risk occupations. And I had no idea what I was signing up for, if I'm being honest. I did not understand anything about the interview process. I was just like, oh, I just really need a job. And sure enough, they hired me because they hire in like what is it, in herds, pretty much. They do like a cattle call. So I ended up started working there, and the first year was a complete like disaster. I had no idea what I was doing. But I learned a lot and had a really good experiences. I, learned how to sell life insurance 100% commission to people who actually really needed it. And so I had a lot of really good relationships that were built. I've met a lot of people, I could drive down the street and I'll be like, oh, well, I remember I have a client that lives here, or I remember this woman that I spoke to here, and there's really good relationships that were built. The second year, I only worked there about 5 years. The second year I doubled my income than the first year. And then the third year I made it a time and a half. I just exponentially was making more money because I was doing management and I was training people, and it was really fulfilling. So I praise God for that for that experience. And then I ended up getting pregnant with me and my husband. We had our first child. And after we had my oldest, who is 2.5 now, they let me go. So I really understood that, it's important to work in a place where you're wanted, and it's important to work in a place where you're fulfilled and where you enjoy to work, because everybody is replaceable in the industry. And unless you have your own business or you're an entrepreneur, or you're working in a place where you are truly valued, which is very hard to find these days, they're just gonna kick you out when it's convenient and bring in someone new right after. So I ended up leaving that company, and that's why I won't ever name who they are. But I had a lot of really good experiences with them, and I learned a lot about myself. I grew a lot professionally and personally. So I really commend that company for teaching me gumption, to stand up for my own, and just to, develop my character and develop who I am. So I really love that. And so then I started working for American Family. Tim Burnett hired me. He called me actually a year prior to me working for him, and he was like, "Hey, you know, I've been wanting you to come work for me for years." And he called me while I was in Florida. We were there for 2 months. He was like, "Can you please, when you come back to Denver, please come work for me?" And I thought it was really odd that he was calling me out of the blue, but I guess, you know, I have a lot of good reviews online and people enjoy working with me, and you know, I am true to my word, and he really wanted that on his team. So anyway, fast forward about a year and he calls me again and he was like, "Hey, so can you please come work for me?" So I was like, "Sure, I'll go in for an interview." And Tim is one of the most down to earth and genuine people I've ever met. There is not a bad bone in that man's body. He is very generous and kind in every sense of the word. Like, not only to his clients and to the people who get insurance with him, he knows them by their name, their kids, their birthdays, their everything. And then also, you know, he does the same thing for us as team members. Like, he's so kind to me. Like, and I could literally call him up in the middle of the night and be like, "Hey, I need you to bail me out, you know, or do whatever," and he'll be there in the split second. So he's a really good guy. So I ended up getting my property and casualty insurance. So not only am I a life insurance specialist, and like I said today, I think it was you or Brian or someone, but you were like, "It's hard to picture you doing anything for a decade," because I'm so young. But yeah, I've been doing life insurance for nearly a decade and I'm pretty good at it. And what I mean by that is I understand how life insurance works. There's a lot of ins and outs, and I understand how the economy is right now, and I understand how that plays into people's budgets and their finance and everything like that. But ultimately, life insurance is one of those non-negotiable things that you need to have. So Tim hired me to be his life insurance specialist, which has been very fulfilling because it's crazy going from a high-paced life insurance, 100% commission environment where you have to sell life insurance, like, you know, 5, 8 policies a week, to going to an American Family, like a big company, and completely like my pay structure has been changed and everything is totally different. And I sell like one life insurance policy, like for example, a month, and everyone like loses their mind. They're like, "How did you do that?" So it's really cool. You kind of feel like a big fish in a little pond. You know what I mean? But it's really interesting and I like it. So yeah, and then I've been working for Tim now, I think 2 years, close to 2.5 years, and time flies and it's been really fulfilling and I love it. And that's what he actually introduced me to the Brighton Chamber. And at first I was really hesitant to go because first of all, it's a really tight-knit group and it's like, you know, you walk into this room and everyone looks at you and you're like, "Hey, I'm new here." And then, you know, you have the pressure of doing like one-on-ones and you have to fit that into your busy schedule. And then you're like, "I don't know if this is going to benefit me," but like at the end of the day, it's not about it benefiting you or anybody else. It's about like growing and networking and building a community of friends that truly do have your back. And so like, if it wasn't for Tim, if it wasn't for the chain of events that led me here, then I don't think that I would be sitting talking to you less. And I don't think I would be even, I had no idea what like a chamber of commerce was before 2 years ago. So it's crazy. And then everyone is so kind and loving. I've had 2 kids since working for Tim, or one before, and then another one I just had about a year ago. And yeah, I feel like my life is kind of like well-rounded out now, and there's a lot of like support that I receive from everybody around me, especially in the chamber group. And I know that if I'm having a bad day or whatever, like Christine will hit me up, or like Amy Flora, or you know, or I mean, geez, even Rachel has been super sweet, Rachel Munoz, and Gretchen is always so kind. And it's like I've never met a more like welcoming group of people. It's just very warm, you know. So that's what I do now. Oh, I also bake sourdough. So that's been
Yes, I wanna talk a little bit about the sourdough because you're headed in that direction, right? Eventually, you won't be a life insurance person.
I feel like I'll do life insurance for the rest of my life just because I have a really large book of business.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, sourdough is going to be like my main forte soon here in a few months. Yeah.
So when did you get started as a baker?
Oh, like 2 months ago, I have never been a good baker ever, ever. Like I could hardly bake a like the box brownies that they you
Yeah.
buy at Supers. I would mess that up, and it was just so gross. But I don't know. Ever since I was a kid, I've like had a dream that I wanted to own like a bakery, but I never like understood why I was having that dream because I'm a terrible baker. But I know it was like God just planting seeds, like, hey, this is something that's gonna happen. And then sure enough, it's almost as if overnight, like I like all the girls on social media are posting about, sourdough bread and like all these like aesthetic pictures of like pastries and everything like that. And I'm like, I've always been a person who chases a challenge. You can ask my husband. I'm always like doing something new. I think that's why him and I get along really well because he's also the same way. He's always finding new creative ways to either like make money or a new project. But anyway, I asked my cousin how she got her sourdough starter because with sourdough, you can't just put yeast and water together. You have to have a starter, and so the starter is literally water and flour that has like fermented, I guess would be a good word, but it develops its own gluten network. That
Right.
way you don't have to
And it
use.
has pulled yeast out of the air, right? You didn't add yeast to it.
No, yeah, no yeast is added. It pulls it out of the air and it actually eats the flour. And I actually put a little bit of rye flour in there when I was creating my starter. So I made it from scratch back in January. And so starters can last years, hundreds of years if you feed it every day. I put a little bit of rye flour in it because it has a lot more lactic acid and it has a lot more food for the water to eat pretty much and the flour to eat. So it's pretty interesting. So yeah, you just mix the starter with a little bit of dough. And that's all that there is. And my sourdough bread that I bake is just water, sourdough starter, and some salt and flour. And then you mix it together and then it becomes this beautiful loaf of bread that should be done in actually um 5 minutes.
There you go. Well, if you need to take a break, we can pause
Yeah.
and come back to it. The so the thing about baking, I am sort of a home cooking nerd. I don't know if you've ever watched any of my YouTube videos, but I have
Yeah.
a lot of YouTube videos on cooking, not a ton of it baking. There's a couple of them. And
You and I
and
can do a cameo. We could film a YouTube
yeah,
video baking something together.
yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing about baking is it's way more precise than cooking. Like, if
Yeah.
your recipe calls for, 300 grams of something, you
Yeah.
better put 300 grams in there, right? Or it's going to mess
Yeah.
up.
Yep, exactly.
And temperature control and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I made a rock the other day because I was trying to make a sourdough loaf for my neighbor, and I didn't realize that she has a gas stove and I had an electric stove. And I had no idea that those two things were even like have different temperatures or
Yep.
whatever. I went and I was like, "Hey, I need to finish baking my loaf at her house because we were all playing Monopoly." I put it in her oven for like maybe 10 minutes and I go and open it. It's literally like you can take someone out with that. It's like a rock. It was insane. And she was like, "Well, how much did you put it on?" I was like, 465 for 10 minutes. And she was like, "Dude, I have a gas stove." And I was like, "Okay, great." I had no idea that that meant something entirely different. So
Yep. Absolutely. And convection versus not convection
yeah.
and what you do to control the humidity in the oven, all that stuff matters in bread baking. And
Yeah.
you, of course, know that now, and you've learned it all in the last few months.
Yeah, especially in Colorado because it's a higher altitude.
Yeah.
For the longest time when I was trying to bake, I would have to use Hungarian flour because it works at a higher altitude. And with sourdough, like I don't have to do that, which is really interesting. But because it's a totally different rising process. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So
Super cool. And so I'm going to ask, since you brought this up, yeah, when you leave us and you go to Florida, the goal is to open a commercial bakery?
Yes, I want to do like a online storefront first, just because, just to learn the logistics and how much overhead I need. And I feel like that would really serve my family
Yep.
best. Because with two children, you only have them at this age for a very short period of time, and I don't want to. I mean, you have kids, I don't want to miss that. And my job first and foremost is to serve my family and my husband. And so my husband actually has a job lined up down there, and he started a new business, which is really cool. He does like window washing and stuff. So, to support him, and that will be my main goal is to have the online storefront and have drop off locations or delivery. I don't
Yep.
know if you have like ever bought a piece of a cow, because you can't like own a cow. You have to buy a piece of a cow for meat. So you could buy like a quarter or whatnot,
Yep.
and then have like drop off locations as well with like raw milk and whatnot. So I think that would be a really good way to started out. And of course, join a chamber as well down there in Tampa.
Yep. And I'm like, wow, this group sounds really cool. And so that's how I got involved. So
Yeah,
let's get to the group, because you've been a member of BBB for what, a year maybe?
a little over a year now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe you to have been quite a wonderful addition to our little club. Um,
Thank you.
and the way I describe it, and I'd like your opinion of this, is it's not really a leads group. Um, it's a collection of friends
Mhm.
who happen to own and operate businesses in Brighton.
Yeah.
Um, and to the extent that that leads to new business, great. But the friendship part is the important part. Do you
Yes.
agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly. I've been a member. So when I first started working for American Family with Tim, um, his son, I have to take the bread out in like 1 minute.
All right.
Um, his son actually worked for him, and he took me to a few different chamber groups, like Denver, Cherry Creek. I'm in a member group of Arvada as well. And honestly, I never really look forward to going to any of those groups because it's not like Brighton.
Yeah.
And I don't say that like lightheartedly. I mean that very much because like you said, it's just a bunch of friends and you get to know someone, and regardless if you do one-on-ones or not, like you really get to spend time and get to know people. And I've sat down with Brian and had a beer, and I've spent time with Charlotte and Christine and some other girls, and it's really nice how welcoming it is, and it's hard to find people like that because you don't it's you're absolutely right when you say you're not there for like referrals or for leads. It's just when you have those people in your mind, and like, when I think of you, I think of wine and I think of the military. So if I meet somebody else or software as well, I think of software when I think of you as well. So I've met several people and they're like, hey, do you know A, B, and C? And I'm like, oh, well, that reminds me of Les. Or like, oh, whenever I go to auto body shop, I think of Christine, or like facials or stuff like that. And so that's how we end up giving people each other like referrals, which has helped a lot. Because I've gotten several referrals from the leads group. And I think that really benefits everybody, just not only by building friendships, but you have somebody that you can call if
Yep.
you need help. Or like Gretchen, for example, I called her and she was able to refer someone over to me. So that was really nice as well.
Super cool. Well, I look forward to, not that because I'm not going to see you anymore, but when you go to Tampa and start building this bakery business, it's a personal challenge for me to be able to help you with that. And I look forward to digging into my network and seeing who I can uh, talk to on your behalf. Um,
I appreciate
if you
that. Let me go
it
take the, it's gonna burn.
All right,
Sorry, hold on. I'm sorry, Les.
no worries.
I'll show you a picture of it. Hold on. Okay, I'm back.
All right.
Look at it.
Awesome. You bake the most beautiful bread.
Thanks, Les. It tastes
Um,
pretty good too.
I'm certain it does, but I mean, I follow you on social, obviously,
Oh
and
yeah, thank you for messaging me earlier, by the way. I really appreciate that.
yeah,
On
and when you show a picture of something you've made, it's always looks glorious. Uh,
Messenger.
Now, it may be because I'm trying to live a low carb lifestyle right now, and I just crave everything you make. Um, but it looks good. Now, have you studied how to photograph food, or you just sort of played around with it until it worked?
No, I didn't actually. I have no idea how to photograph food. I am so bad at like setting up those little, the little like when you do a photograph and you put like a nice jar here and then like a plant
Yeah.
here. I can't do that, Les. I literally just put on portrait mode on my phone and just like snap a picture and I hope that it turns out. I hope that people can smell the food through the picture. That's the most that I'm trying to do.
So, how much longer are you in Brighton, give or take?
We're leaving in June.
Okay, so not terribly long.
February, March, April, May, June.
Yeah.
2 months. Be here for 2 more months because we are, yeah, 2 months. We
So,
signed.
you know who knows how to do this stuff is Samantha. You should chat with her before you leave her. She's a really valuable resource for this kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um, and so you should take advantage of that while you're still here.
I think that's
Uh,
a great idea. I also want to talk with Ian because Ian is phenomenal.
he's next level. I mean, if you
Yeah,
want to do like no kidding Hollywood level video, Ian's the
yeah,
guy.
yeah. I don't
Um,
know how he does that. He's so talented.
he it, I follow him, and sometimes it makes me feel sad because I play around with making video, and I'll watch one of his and I'm like, I'm never going to be that good no matter how
Yeah,
much I play around.
yeah. I'm the same way. I'm like, dude, does he use AI? Does he do filters? Like,
Yeah.
how does he manage to do this? And I feel like for him, it's so effortless because he's been doing it for a long time. But
Yeah, and he knows what he's doing, right? It's the thing he has studied. Right now I know a ton about wine, right? Most
are
people
there
don't.
are there any wine? I mean, what's the closest winery that you work with? Is it up in Palisade?
No, the closest wineries that I know personally are all here in the Front Range, right? It's a
I see.
refrigerated truck ride away.
I see.
Um,
Yeah.
and so there's a winery called Kingman Estates. Karen Kingman is part of our group now. That used to be in North Denver, and they're in the process of moving to Brighton. They're going to be just north of Todd Creek off Highway 7, and that'll be our first winery in Brighton.
She's the
Um,
she's really nice. She's the older woman, right, with the short hair.
Yep. And she is lovely.
Yeah.
And her husband's a super cool dude. He has not come to a meeting yet. Next time we see Karen, let's fuss at him about not having Doug come to one of the meetings yet.
Yeah.
And then the other one with local ties is in North Denver. It's the Sunnyside neighborhood, if you're familiar with that part, just north of Lodi,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So if you drive north out of Lodi, like you're going back towards I-70, that neighborhood up there is Sunnyside.
Yeah.
And Bonaquisti Wine Company is in the Sunnyside neighborhood. And Paul Bonaquisti is a graduate of Brighton High School.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Small
So
world.
he still has family here in Brighton, and I lean on him from time to come do Brighton things.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a ton of cool wineries, here in the Front Range.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to know about those, let me know and I'll be glad to share.
I would love to because I love wine. I just don't like cheap wine, which sucks because good wine costs money and it's like that's not like a priority for me right now, but
Yeah.
you know how it is with kids. But I
Well,
love wine.
you
I just don't like the sulfites and the sulfates that they put in there and I would like wine that has not been the grapes have not been sprayed with pesticides because
yep.
that stays in your system for a long time. And it's really hard to find, if I'm being
So,
honest.
I have a friend, an estate winery out in Cedar Edge, which is sort of between Palisade and Delta. If you don't know Colorado
I do.
geography,
It's
none of
about
that
five
means.
hours. It's about 5 hours from here.
Yeah. But he is what I would call a natural winemaker, very non-interventionist, very not full of additives.
Yeah.
And I'm actually a member of his wine club. So
Okay.
I get a bunch of wine all the time from
Okay.
him.
Okay.
Uh,
Maybe
and
maybe you and I could exchange wine for sourdough,
yeah,
or since you're on a low
absolutely.
carb thing, maybe I can make you a low carb sourdough because my sourdough right now is at about 11.7% protein. Um, so
Have
yeah,
you played around with low carb recipes yet?
yes.
Okay, because I volunteer to be your test subject if you
Yes,
want to continue to experiment. Um,
absolutely. You know what? That could be a YouTube video that we do is wine and bread. I'm
yeah.
thinking cheese. I'm thinking like balsamic vinaigrette.
I'm going to leave you an opportunity to give a parting thought uh, about entrepreneurship, about the BBB, anything you would like to share with people in a situation similar to you who are, going out and trying new things and starting a business.
That's a very good question slash statement. I don't really know like what to say other than the common knowledge that's already out there. Like if you're going to be starting anything new, then just don't stop. You know what I mean? Like don't stop going because look at actors and actresses and who was it? I think it was the guy who created Dyson tested 5,170 something vacuums before he found one that worked and was good production. It takes time to create good work and good things come to those who work hard and there's no such thing as luck. You know what I mean? Like lucky people are hardworking people. So I think the only parting thoughts that I would leave is, whether you're doing life insurance or baking sourdough like I do, which have no correlation to one another, just, don't ever stop trying new things and don't ever stop moving because we have this one shell of a body, but we live multiple different lives within it. And why not make it exciting and do something that's worthwhile? So I don't know. That's one thing that I can leave.
I described myself as lucky once to a guy that I worked for. This is back when I was in the Navy and I worked for this admiral. And I told him that I had been born under a lucky star because I kept stumbling into these amazingly cool opportunities in the military. And he looked at me with a very serious face and he goes, "Good fortune smiles on the prepared." And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And but that gets to your point, right? Just go do, right? Because that's how you'll be prepared is trying.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and I'm sure your first sourdough attempts were not the best.
It
Uh,
flopped. Hmm.
but boy, they look good on Facebook right now. So um, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Um, all right, I'm gonna let you get the rest of your day back, and thank you so much for hanging out. Thanks for being a BBB member. I count you among those friends that I get to see every Thursday, um,
Yeah,
and it's one of the high points of my week. So
mine too.
thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Les.
Bye bye.
Bye.